What if the universe only starts existing the moment you observe it, not metaphorically, literally? What if reality remains in limbo, silent, shapeless, undefined, until your gaze collapses it into form? Science has a name for this: the observer effect. And it might be the single most misunderstood and most powerful truth about the life you're living right now. Science also says your brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what you imagine. When you think vividly enough, neurons fire as if it's already happening. So what if every thought is already a creation? What if your internal world isn't responding to reality, but directing it? There's a version of you right now already living the life you want, peaceful, abundant, connected, whole. But you can't see it. Not because it doesn't exist, but because your attention isn't there yet. This video isn't just information, it's transmission. It's not asking for your belief, it's asking for your attention. Because that, your attention, is the brush that paints your experience of life, moment by moment, thought by thought, feeling by feeling. Everything around you, everything within you, is responding to where you place your awareness. And that's not spiritual poetry. That's quantum physics, that's neuroscience. That's the architecture of consciousness, waiting for your recognition. You're not here by accident. You didn't click this video. This video found you. It arrived exactly when your field was open enough to hear this message. Your life isn't stuck. It's waiting for observation, not passive looking, but conscious witnessing. And every time you choose to look, really look, every time you choose to think, not just react, every time you choose to feel, not just repeat, you're altering the coordinates of your reality. You are collapsing possibilities into experience. You're about to discover how. Reality isn't solid, it's responsive. We've been taught to believe the world exists first, and that we show up later to witness it. But what if that's backward? What if your perception isn't just reacting to what is, but actively selecting what becomes? Quantum physics shattered the old model of a static, objective universe. In its place, it revealed something far stranger and more intimate: that the building blocks of matter, the very particles that make up your body, your thoughts, your life, do not behave like fixed things. They behave like possibilities. They flicker in and out of existence, spread across potential states until they are observed, and then, with shocking precision, they collapse into form, into location, into reality. This is not science fiction. It's measurable, repeated, real. It's called the collapse of the wave function, and it happens every time you bring your awareness to something. You are not separate from the universe. You are a participant in its ongoing creation. Everything exists in superposition, meaning every outcome, every choice, every version of your life, simultaneously available in a field of infinite potential. But the moment you observe with intention, that field narrows. Reality crystallizes. The possibility becomes an experience. So no, reality isn't fixed. It's waiting for instruction, not verbal, not even physical, but energetic. And what gives the instruction? Your attention. Not casual attention, but focused, emotionally charged, belief-backed attention. Every time you think about a limitation, you strengthen it. Every time you expect a delay, you confirm it. Every time you revisit a wound without awareness, you reactivate it. And yet, every time you hold a vision, every time you choose presence, every time you feel gratitude for what's unseen but already forming, you are coding reality with a new set of instructions. You're not here to wait for something to change. You're here to recognize that it already is, because you are the one collapsing it. Your brain isn't a camera, it's a projector. You've been told that your mind passively records what happens, like a security system, like a witness. But that's not true. Your brain doesn't show you reality. It builds one based on what it expects to see. What enters your senses is incomplete. Fragments of light, sound, touch. It's your brain that fills in the blanks. It filters. It edits. It reconstructs the world not based on what is, but based on what you believe is possible. Karl Pribram, a leading neuroscientist, proposed something revolutionary: that your brain doesn't store images like a photograph, but interference patterns. like a hologram. In other words, reality is not out there, fixed and waiting to be found. It's being decoded inside you through waves of expectation, memory, emotion, and belief. Imagine you're standing in front of a field of infinite possibilities, a superposition of all realities. Your nervous system acts like a tuner, decoding the signals that match what you are most focused on. Not what you want, but what you are ready to perceive. That's why two people can live through the same situation and walk away with entirely different stories. Same event, different experience. Because perception isn't about what's happening, it's about who's looking. The brain, shaped by emotion, repetition, trauma, desire, and language, filters everything through a lens built not of glass, but of past. This is why affirmations often don't work on their own. If your brain hasn't been trained to expect what you're saying, it deletes it as noise. Not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. That's the trap. We think we're observing life objectively, when in truth, we're reliving patterns neurologically. But here's the breakthrough. If your brain can be shaped by the past, it can be reshaped by the present. When you introduce new thoughts and repeat them with emotion, you don't just think positive. You literally rewrite the pathways that shape your perception. You start to see opportunities you used to overlook. You hear the yes where you once heard rejection. You feel safe in places that used to trigger fear because your lens is clearing. And with it, your version of reality begins to shift. You're not here to record the world. You're here to rebuild it from the inside out. Looking is not passive. Thinking is not neutral. Every time you look at something, really look. You are not just witnessing reality. You're touching it, directing it, calling it into form. And every time you think about something, you are not merely reacting. You are engaging the most powerful tool of transformation known to the human experience, focused consciousness. This is what quantum physics has been whispering for over a century, that the act of observation is not innocent. It changes what is being observed. Particles, the smallest building blocks of reality, behave differently when we watch them. They go from existing in all states at once to collapsing into one, simply because we chose to pay attention. Now pause and consider that. If the most fundamental structures of the universe respond to your awareness, what does that say about your thoughts, your choices, your beliefs? What does that say about the version of reality you're currently living in? Observation isn't just seeing, it's an act of intention. It's creative, generative, defining. It collapses possibilities into actualities, and it does so in response to your presence. But here's where it gets even more extraordinary. Looking alone creates impact. But looking while thinking, that's where reality begins to bend. Because thought is not trapped inside your head. Thought carries energy, frequency, vibration. It travels outward into the quantum field. And when paired with conscious attention, it acts like a beacon, pulling into your timeline the realities that resonate with that frequency. It's not just that you attract what you think, it's that you activate what you observe, and then you amplify it with what you think about it. Imagine walking into a room filled with doors. Each one leads to a different version of your future. Your gaze selects which ones begin to glow. Your thoughts are the keys that open them, and your emotional state determines how quickly they unlock. This is why fear multiplies problems, why doubt delays progress, why gratitude speeds up manifestation, because what you think while you look becomes a signal. And the quantum field is always listening. Most people don't know they're creating. They think they're coping, reacting, hoping. But in truth, they are shaping, coding, commanding. With every focused thought, every repeated vision, every story they retell in their head. This is not wishful thinking. This is physics. This is neurobiology. This is the invisible mechanism that turns your attention into outcomes. So ask yourself, where is your gaze? What realities are you reinforcing by repeatedly looking at them? And what stories are you silently strengthening through the thoughts you allow to take root? You don't need to be perfect to create your reality. You just need to become aware of the power you hold in each observation and conscious of the thoughts you pair with it, because every time you look and think, you're not just interpreting the world, you're issuing a command. Reality is listening, and it responds not to your intentions, but to your attention. Your desires are not far away, they're already entangled with you. In the quantum world, distance doesn't mean separation. Two particles that have interacted even briefly remain connected across time and space. Touch one and the other responds instantly, no matter how far apart they seem. This is known as quantum entanglement, and it's not just happening between particles in a lab. It's happening between you and everything you've ever deeply wanted. The moment a desire arises, not a passing craving, but a true longing rooted in your soul, it becomes linked to your field. It's no longer separate. It exists as a version of reality already encoded in the quantum field, waiting not to be created, but to be received. But here's the paradox. Desire creates connection. Attachment creates distance. When you want something with tension, with fear, with lack, you create friction, resistance, disruption in the coherence between you and the thing you've already entangled with. This is why manifestation often feels blocked, not because it isn't working, but because it's working too precisely. You're emitting the frequency of absence while hoping to receive the experience of arrival. Let's be clear. The field doesn't respond to what you hope for. It responds to what you are aligned with emotionally. Are you in the energy of receiving or in the energy of chasing? Here's the shift. When you shift from wanting energy to receiving energy, you activate the thread that already connects you to your desired reality. You don't have to invent it. You don't have to earn it. You only have to stop repelling it with the vibration of doubt. Think of it this way. Your desire is like a radio broadcast already playing, not far from you, but just slightly out of range. Every time you obsess over when it will arrive or worry that you're doing it wrong, you shift off frequency. You lose the signal. Not because it stopped transmitting, but because you stopped believing it was already yours. This is where trust becomes the bridge. Trust is not passive. It's not waiting. It's a frequency, a decision. It says, I know the connection is already made. I choose to relax into the inevitability of what's coming. And in that moment, your field relaxes. The signal clears. The quantum thread between you and your desire begins to pulse with energy, not from striving, but from surrender. This is what Amit Goswami meant when he said, consciousness is the ground of all being. Not matter, not effort, consciousness. When you bring conscious awareness to your desire, without gripping, without forcing, you entangle with it at the deepest level. And from there, it's only a matter of time before that entanglement collapses into your timeline. But it won't look like magic. It will look like alignment, like a door opening where there was once a wall, like the right person showing up just as you let go of needing someone to. Like ease, not because you manipulated the outcome, but because you remembered who you are, the observer that creates through coherence, not control. So pause now and feel this. What if what you want is already entangled with you? What if all that's left is to stop pushing it away? You're not waiting for the universe to change, your nervous system is. Most people believe manifestation is some mystical transaction. You ask, you wait, you receive. But underneath the rituals, beneath the vision boards and the affirmations, there is a deeper process happening, one that begins not in the sky, but in the structure of your brain. Manifestation is not about asking the universe for something new. It's about training your body to expect what your mind used to doubt. Because if your nervous system is wired for fear, for lack, for disappointment, you'll reject abundance even when it knocks on your front door. Here's what the science shows us. Your brain is plastic, not physically, neurologically. Every thought, every repeated feeling, every emotional loop carves new grooves into your neural pathways. And the stronger the emotional charge, the deeper those grooves become. So when you've spent years believing that success is hard, that love hurts, that good things never last, your brain adapts. It forms predictive maps that expect pain, expect effort, expect delay. And once those maps are in place, your body follows. You start filtering life not for what's possible, but for what feels familiar, even if familiar means suffering. This is why change feels uncomfortable, not because it's dangerous, but because it's unknown. And your nervous system is designed to prioritize survival over expansion, even when expansion is what your soul is crying for. So if you want to manifest a new reality, you don't need more willpower. You need safety. You need your brain and body to believe that the new story is safe enough to live in. That's where embodiment comes in. Visualization works not because it's magical, but because it gives your brain a template of what to expect. When you see it clearly, feel it emotionally, breathe it physically, you're not pretending. You're rehearsing a new identity. Andrew Newberg, a pioneer in neurotheology, revealed that spiritual practices like prayer and meditation literally rewire the brain. They calm the amygdala, your fear center, and strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of your mind that plans, envisions, and chooses. In other words, they build the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. When you combine that with gratitude, not as a performance but as a real emotional frequency, you unlock even more. Gratitude is one of the few states that activates reward circuitry without external proof. It lets the body feel now what it used to wait for. And that matters because your nervous system doesn't distinguish between real and vividly imagined. It only responds to what you feel consistently. So, manifestation is not mystical, it's measurable, it's electric, it's hormonal, it's structural. It's the process of turning a possibility into a pattern, a story into a signal, a desire into a default setting. And once your body is no longer arguing with your intention, your actions align, your attention sharpens, your timing improves, and what once felt far away starts arriving with a rhythm that feels effortless. Because it's not about chasing miracles, it's about becoming the version of you who's not surprised by them. You've been taught to push, strive, grind, and force. But the universe doesn't speak the language of pressure. It responds to frequency. That's why effort without alignment often leads to burnout. And why people with less talent, fewer resources, and quieter voices sometimes seem to manifest everything while you're still trying to deserve it. Because reality isn't responding to your effort. It's responding to your energetic state. Think of it like a radio. The music you want is already being broadcast, but if you're tuned to the wrong station, static, noise, silence. Not because the signal isn't there, but because you're not aligned with it. It works the same with your life. The version of you that lives in peace, wealth, purpose, it already exists. But you don't access it through effort. You access it through resonance. Dr. David Hawkins mapped out emotional frequencies, revealing what mystics have long known. Fear vibrates low, shame even lower, gratitude, love, joy. They don't just feel better, they vibrate higher. And when you dwell in those states consistently, you tune your field to match the frequency where the life you want already exists. This isn't emotional bypass, this is energetic physics. Your thoughts carry an electrical charge, your emotions carry a magnetic field. Together they generate your electromagnetic signature, a broadcast you send into the quantum field 24/7. And that field, it's not judging, it's not punishing, it's just matching your signal. So when you try to force reality, when you hustle from scarcity or grind from fear of being left behind, you actually push the very thing you want further away. Because force is a frequency, and that frequency says, I don't have it, I'm not enough, I need to control this, which tells the field, reflect more lack, more delay, more resistance. On the other hand, when you choose alignment, even in the face of chaos, when you breathe through uncertainty, trust without proof, act from knowing, pause instead of panicking, you shift your frequency from lack to readiness. And that's when things begin to move. Not because you're pushing, but because you're pulling reality into coherence with who you've decided to be. The key isn't to be high vibe all the time, it's to be honestly aware of what you're broadcasting. To pause when you spiral, to redirect when you get stuck, to choose again, not with shame but with presence. Because reality doesn't respond to how much you want, it responds to what you embody. This is why your most magnetic moments are often the quietest. Not when you're forcing outcomes, but when you're centered, clear, certain. When your body feels safe, when your heart feels grateful, when your mind stops scrambling for evidence and starts trusting its own signal. You don't have to chase what's yours. You just have to become the station where it already exists and tune in. There's a reason why some shifts feel instant, sudden, unexplainable. One day, everything seems stuck, and the next, things just start unfolding, almost as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting for you to align. That's not luck. That's physics. That's phase locking. In the language of science, phase locking happens when two oscillating systems begin to synchronize, like the orbits of planets, like neurons in deep meditation, like a tuning fork vibrating in harmony with another across the room. And like you, when your internal frequency finally aligns with the version of reality you've been seeking, your desires are not random. They are signatures of alternate timelines, ones that already exist in the field. And every time you meditate, visualize, breathe into possibility, or move with clarity, you begin to synchronize with that version. Not conceptually, energetically, mathematically. It begins subtly. You notice synchronicities. You start responding differently, calmer, clearer. You're no longer chasing outcomes. You're inhabiting a new rhythm. The people who used to trigger you feel as distant. The patterns that once consumed your energy lose their grip, and new options begin to appear, not because you forced them, but because you're now resonating with the version of you who naturally attracts them. This is what a phase transition feels like. When a system reaches a critical threshold of coherence, it reorganizes itself instantly. Water turns to steam, caterpillars become butterflies, and you from one identity to another. This is why trying harder often delays the shift, because trying from your current identity reinforces separation. But when you become still, not passive but present, you give your system space to phase lock into something higher. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about matching the frequency of who you're already becoming. Think of two spinning wheels. When they move at different speeds, they clash. But when their rotations match, they lock into harmony. That's what happens when your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin orbiting the same center, the version of reality where you already have what you've been seeking. And here's the most important part. The signal you're looking for doesn't come from outside. It starts with you. Because timelines aren't waiting to be discovered. They're waiting to be chosen. And choice isn't just decision. It's a vibrational act. It's the moment you stop doubting and start tuning. The moment you stop observing your current conditions and start embodying the energy of a new one. And once that alignment clicks, the universe doesn't need time. It only needs coherence. When your body, mind, and heart synchronize with your vision, you enter the frequency of inevitability. And what was once a dream becomes the only outcome possible. It's not the beginning that tests you. It's the edge of breakthrough. That quiet space, the one that feels empty, unresponsive, eerily still, is where most people turn back. Not because they're wrong, but because they misunderstand what the silence really means. You've done the work. You've meditated, visualized, affirmed. You've felt your energy rise, you've glimpsed the shift, and then suddenly, nothing. The world stops moving. Doors stay closed. Synchronicities fade. It's like the universe has gone dark. And that's when the panic starts to creep in. This is the threshold, the place between the old identity and the new timeline, a place physicists and mystics both recognize, the quantum vacuum, where potential is at its peak, but nothing has yet collapsed into form. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But from the inside, it's the most fertile space in all of existence. It's where old patterns are dismantling behind the scenes. It's where your field is being reconfigured to hold more clarity, more truth, more alignment. But to the untrained mind, this space feels like failure. You start looking for evidence. You check your bank account, your inbox, your relationships. And when nothing appears different, you spiral back into doubt. You reach for control. You return to force. And in doing so, you disrupt the process that was already underway. This is the final test of coherence. Can you remain in frequency even when the world doesn't validate it yet? Most people can't. They collapse their own timeline days before it would have stabilized. They surrender to impatience, not presence, to proof, not trust. But those who cross this invisible line, they don't push harder. They surrender deeper. They understand that this void isn't punishment. It's integration. It's your nervous system catching up with the new blueprint. It's your external life rearranging around a new set of instructions. And just like a seed buried in the earth, there's a moment when the most radical transformation is completely hidden from sight. That's what this phase is. Not stillness, not failure, but preparation. If you felt this space, the stillness after alignment, the silence after clarity, you are not regressing. You're hovering at the very edge of emergence. Don't quit now. Don't abandon the frequency just because reality hasn't collapsed yet. It takes time for the physical world to catch up to quantum choice, and often the greater the shift, the longer the integration window. So here's what you do. You stop asking for signs. You stop begging for proof. You become the evidence yourself. You carry the energy of what's coming as if it's already yours, because it is. Not in your hands yet, but in your field. And the more you honor that, the faster it finds a way into your physical experience. This is the sacred pause. Hold the frequency, because the shift is closer than you think. You don't manifest and then become, you become and then you manifest. This is the reversal that changes everything, because most people are trying to attract a new life while still thinking, feeling and acting like the person they no longer want to be. They wake up hoping that reality will give them a reason to change, a breakthrough, a sign, a win, something external that confirms internal transformation. But that's not how reality works, at least not at the quantum level. You're not waiting on the universe is waiting on identity coherence. In the quantum field, possibility is constant. What changes is your alignment with it. There are infinite versions of you already existing. The one who's abundant, the one who's healed, the one who's deeply loved, the one who walks with quiet certainty. And none of these versions need to be built from scratch. They don't need to be earned or chased. They need to be embodied. This is the reverse manifestation principle. You don't become abundant by receiving money. You receive money because you've already become someone who trusts they are supported. You don't find love and then feel whole. You feel whole and love arrives as a reflection, not as a solution. That's why waiting never works. Because waiting vibrates as absence. And absence is what the field keeps mirroring back to you. Your field is not responding to your goals. It's responding to your self-perception, to how you carry yourself, to the thoughts you rehearse and the emotions you allow to settle in your nervous system. Every day, you're transmitting a signal. This is who I am. This is what I expect. This is what I'm available for. And the quantum responds, not by judging, but by matching. So here's the shift. Start from the identity you want to inhabit, not the results you want to achieve. Ask yourself, how does that version of me speak? What do they tolerate? How do they walk into a room? What kind of thoughts do they entertain when no one is watching? And then begin living from that version. Not pretending, but remembering. Because that version already exists in the field, and their signal is waiting for you to lock in. When you do this, you trigger something powerful. Quantum tunneling. The phenomenon where a particle passes through an energy barrier it shouldn't be able to cross. It doesn't push through it. It phases through it. Instantly, seamlessly, without explanation. And this is how major life changes often arrive. Not gradually, but as if you woke up in a different universe where the problem never existed. Because you did. Not because you forced the change, but because your consciousness tunneled into a new version of reality, where that timeline was already real. This is why your future self feels familiar. Because it's not in the future. It's already sending signals back to you, whispers of intuition, nudges of knowing, synchronicities that feel too perfect to be random. So the question isn't, how do I get there? The real question is, who do I need to stop pretending to be, so I can finally remember who I already am? This isn't just a video playing on a screen. It's a mirror, a field, a wave function collapsing into form through you. The words you're hearing, the sensations you're feeling, the thoughts rising up as you listen, they're not random. They're a reflection of your own frequency, meeting this moment in time. In quantum physics, particles exist in all possible states until observed. They remain undefined, suspended in potential, until a conscious observer locks in on one outcome. Only then does it become real. You're not passively consuming this content. You're actively selecting this version of reality out of countless ones that were available the second you pressed play. You are the observer, the selector, the cause. This moment was always here, but it took your attention to bring it into being. Think about that. You could have scrolled past. You could have dismissed this as another video in the algorithm, but something in you paused, chose, focused, and in that instant, a new potential collapsed into form, not just in this content, but in your consciousness. Because everything you've heard here is not information, it's activation. Each word, each metaphor, each silence has been a doorway. And by choosing to walk through it, you've already changed the timeline you were on, not someday. Now, in the neurological patterns being formed as we speak, in the emotional resonance settling into your body, in the field around you, already responding. You're not learning something new, you're remembering something ancient. You've always been the one creating reality with your awareness. You've always been tuning into the signal of your own becoming. You just forgot. You got distracted by evidence. You let your past set the boundaries for your future. And you waited for proof before permission, but not anymore. Because right now, as you sit in this space of awareness, you've collapsed a version of yourself that already knows. You're not here to chase your desires. You're here to meet them in the field, to synchronize, to merge, to allow. You're not here to be good enough for your dream life. You're here to remember that you've been entangled with it the entire time. And that subtle sense of resonance you're feeling, that quiet yes rising in your chest, that's your confirmation. This isn't a motivational ending. This is a transmission still unfolding. Long after this video ends, your brain will be processing, rewiring, absorbing. And the quantum field will continue responding to your new signal, not because you demanded it, but because you finally believed it was already done. So breathe. Not as a task, as a declaration. This is your alignment. Your arrival, your coherence. You're not watching this, you're collapsing it. And with it, you've collapsed the version of reality that was always waiting for your attention.